right, Thomas, thank you for that. We're going to welcome in our next live guest. We've got Nick Dangles, who's the co-founder over at Kinetic. And Nick, we are super excited to welcome you onto the show to get some extra perspective on the Slink program. So thanks for being here.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about Sync. It's a training as a service platform for the transportation industry. It's a joint venture between Kinetic and Metaphora, and training tends to be an area where the industry really struggles. And I mean that from both a new hire perspective and a continuing education professional development perspective. So we put together Sync to help deliver training more effectively, to help decrease ramp times and improve retention, and also to lessen what we call the management burden of training.
And Nick, when we're talking about training, it's such a crucial part with onboarding. Why is it so overlooked from majority of companies?
It's a good question. And it's not overlooked because people think it's unimportant. It just rarely gets prioritized. If you look at the brokerage environment, people are busy. It's a really hectic environment. A lot of time managers are responsible for training and they have other things to do. And also, brokers just want to get people on the floor as quickly as possible a lot of the time. And they err on the side of putting bodies on the floor, even if they aren't fully trained or productive bodies.
I think that the piece of that also can't be overstated is the fact that if you are not making those cold calls and not closing those deals, you're not making money for the company, right? So it can kind of be hard to get out of that mindset of, okay, we've got to take our broker off the floor and get them out of that money-making capacity and to take time to be trained. But the mindset should be completely different, right? More training should equal a better broker, therefore more money coming into your business. It's just that investment that you have to make. How does Slink now help really kind of make these brokerages or make these companies see a better investment in their time? That training as a service platform makes them more likely to want to train because it helps them do it more efficiently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, training is immensely important. And at Sync, I'm going to talk about this from kind of two perspectives. First, from a new hire perspective, I mean, you hit on this a second ago, Kaylee. It's pretty straightforward. If you want to set somebody up for failure, don't train them. And you can easily look up statistics on how much more productive someone is after being trained compared to just throwing them into things. Or you can even talk about the cost of a bad hire, right? If somebody quits after 6 months because you didn't give them the training to do their job, that costs companies something crazy like 15 or 20K. To me, almost the more interesting part is when it comes to experienced hires and continuing education. Think about the skills that you need to broker freight at a high level. I mean, you're using things like communication and conflict resolution, problem solving every single day, even financial literacy when you start looking a little more closely at your book of business. It's just such a demanding job from a skills perspective, but very few people get trained on all of them. And I hear this depressing phrase periodically, or a variant of it, where someone's been in the industry for a long time and they say, hey, I brokered freight for 10 years, but all I really learned was the rate from Chicago to Atlanta. And that sucks because there's just so much more that goes into brokerage, but talented people leave because they don't get the training that they need to do well.
And Nick, that's going to be the next question. Can you talk to around how it's important for retention efforts and really keeping top talent around?
Oh yeah, I mean, training and retention go hand in hand, particularly for the newer generation coming into the industry. I mean, they want personal and professional growth. They want training. They want career advancement. So even if you're a smaller brokerage with a flat management structure and you might not have opportunities for career advancement, what you can offer is training. This way people still feel engaged, they feel like they're learning things, and they feel like there's value in a role at your company. Even if someone's making a six-figure salary, they're doing well brokering freight, they're going to start looking around if they feel like they're going nowhere professionally. I guess, in a nutshell, my main point there is if they're not getting training from you, they're going to go find it somewhere else.
That point is also something that cannot be overstated, right? Especially with the generation now entering the workforce. They have a take no crap attitude because they know that they can go down the street and find another job, which it might be entry level and it might suck at the first part, but they can find something else if they're not getting what they need. Can you talk a little bit about the value that training like Slink has maybe for those long haulers in your brokerage, those middle to upper managers who have maybe been on the sales floor, they're a pod leader or they've got a small team underneath them and they've been there for a decade or longer and they're comfortable, they like where they are, but maybe they're not necessarily acting or actively seeking out more training? Does this still have value for them even if they're comfortable?
Oh, absolutely. I think a really good example of that is management training. I mean, a lot of the times in brokerages, what you do for managers is, well, you take your highest performing carrier rep or customer rep and you put them into a management position. Unfortunately, they don't get a lot of training going into that management position. So even if you've been doing brokerage for 10 years and you've been really successful and comfortable, like this new role that's been thrust upon you, you might not have the skills needed to do well in that new role. So folks, even when they're like 10, 15 years into their career, still need training depending on what specific role they're in or what they're going into or what just new challenges they're facing.
And so when we're looking at Sync itself, how does that approach training?
Yeah, so our approach to training is, I'm going to hit on a couple of things here. We really believe that training needs to be engaging, relevant, and I'd say actionable. You have to be able to take that training and actually apply it to your job. You know, sticking somebody in front of a computer or in a lecture for an hour doesn't do that. I don't care how many times you're told how to have a conversation with a driver, you don't fully understand it until you actually do it. So, like, while we do have a video component to our training in Sync, we also have activities and simulations and shadowing to really help people acclimate to their roles. And the other thing I touch on here is that we're big believers that learning is a process, not an event. So we're in Sync, we're not just building out, hey, here's 2 weeks of training and then you're done. We're building out specific learning paths for folks so that you can use Sync on day one in your brokerage and continue through your learning journey all the way until you leave.
And of course, half the battle with getting people trained is getting them to buy into the value of the training. What has the response been so far from people who are using Sync and since it's been launched? Has it been really positive, and are you seeing your numbers of users start to tick up?
Yeah, so we launched relatively recently. Like we launched our pilot program, I'd say back in October. So we're currently onboarding pilot customers. We're still very much MVP, but the feedback we're getting is great. People are able to take the training that they're getting and apply it to their jobs in a way that just hasn't been as easy to do prior to.
And if people want to learn more about Sync and really reach out, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me. The best way to reach me is probably email. It's nick@poweredbykinetic.com, or reach out to any of the folks at Metaphora, and anyone will be happy to walk you through.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Real quick, also, is this a program that's for everyone, or is there a certain size for the company?
It's for everyone. Like current state, we are really focused on brokerage and also tech companies, but we're going to be moving into different market segments as we go. But yeah, right now, any size broker and also freight tech companies.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Definitely something that a lot of companies can utilize today.
Thanks for having me.